Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Liverpool Transfer Show on Football Talk Podcast. My name is Ozzy, and I'm your host for this evening. Tonight, we'll speak about some of the rumors circulating the airwaves, not sort of any huge updates in regards to big moves or anything to that nature, but definitely a few discussions that we can do together. So let's start with the first rumor that is pretty much close to being official news, and that is Darwin Nunez moving over to Al Hilal. So of course we know that there has been an agreement in place between the two clubs. It's 53 million euros plus add-ons, um, and Nunez is being rewarded with a 3-year deal at his new club. The players, of course, agreed to it. He's regarded as one of their first choices, and Inzaghi pretty much made that clear to his sort of hierarchy that Nunez is his number one target. So the current rumor is that he's apparently flown over to Saudi to conclude a medical, so we'll get some sort of confirmation or clarity in the next day or so. So overall, are we pleased with the deal? For me, in terms of the transfer fee in British pounds, it's pretty much 46 million pounds in total, plus add-ons as well. But of course, we don't know what the add-ons entail. It's slightly lower than what I was expecting, if I'm being brutally honest. I thought we'd get something in the region of 50 million plus for Darwin, especially when it comes to interest from Saudi Arabia. I thought we would have got close to 70 million. So maybe I was a little bit too excited with that sort of valuation. But overall, I think it's a good deal for Darwin Nunez. It's interesting that he signed for 3 years, so it shows that he doesn't see himself being in the Middle East for too long or for the long term, and he has aspirations to eventually either move back to Europe in the future, or if things don't go well in terms of his career, he can always move back to South America. So for me, it's more of a next venture for him, where he'll see how he does there. He'll earn a bucket load of money. He'll be earning 400k a week. I saw a funny clip earlier on today where he had a some sort of social media clip. I think it might have been with Liverpool Football Club. And he had Diaz, and they were doing some sort of questionnaires together. And he was telling the presenter that he wants more money, and then he mentioned Saudi as well. So ironically, he's got his wish, because there were some rumors circling that the move to Saudi didn't appeal to Darwin Núñez. But of course, things change, and I feel like for Darwin Núñez, it's the best move for him to move over there. He'll get to play first team football. I think he'll be a different player there. I think he'll score a lot of goals there, and it could definitely help in terms of claiming a position in the Uruguayan squad for the World Cup, but also maybe help him, enjoy a move back to Europe in the near future. So I think it's a good move for him. For Liverpool's point of view, we get a decent amount of money. We can use that to reinvest into the squad, whether it goes into the Isak kitty or it goes into the Barcola kitty. Who knows at this stage, but the finances will definitely help. Of course, it'll balance the books, but also it can be reinvested in other areas of the squad. So overall, pleased with the deal in the end. I think it suits both parties, and I wish Darwin Núñez all the best. I don't think he's a player that should be regarded as a flop or anything to that nature. He's given us some great moments in the last 2 3 years. I feel like it just hasn't worked out. And these things happen in football. You've got a player with quality, but unfortunately, his skill set just doesn't match with the way Liverpool want to play, nor does it match the physicality and intensity of the Premier League. So, these things happen. I don't think it's a crazy, situation where we have to label him as a flop. In terms of the transfer fee, we paid around 60 odd million for him plus add-ons, but I believe the add-ons, those clauses were never activated to that extent. So we haven't made a crazy loss, if that makes sense, just to, you know, make it feel a bit better, in terms of a financial point of view. But I think it's a good move for him, and I think for Liverpool, we can now move on and focus on finding his replacement in the squad, which hopefully we can do in the near future. And this guy could be potentially that man, and that is Alexander Isak. So the current rumor or the current news that we're getting regarding the speculation is that Liverpool maintain their focus on Alexander Isak for the final weeks of the summer window. Uh, New proposal is expected to be submitted, so a second bid is incoming. But the sort of the asterisk to that is if Newcastle open doors to that move. Isak maintains his position. He doesn't want to play or stay at Newcastle, and he wants to leave and join Liverpool FC. So, no who's surprised in terms of Isak's stance. It's been quite clear, where he stands right now. And Newcastle have kind of reciprocated themselves, where he's arrived for training yesterday and he was pretty much told, look, go and train by yourself. You're not part of the squad anymore. So, both of them are not on good terms, so it only means one outcome, and that should be that the player gets his wish and is able to get a move to Liverpool. Now, the big question is, does Alexander Isak hand in a transfer request in order to escalate the process and help uh, a deal being finalized between the two clubs? I think so. I think it needs to be done now. Even though the writing's on the wall that Isak's not happy, Newcastle unhappy, and probably Liverpool unhappy in terms of, getting this deal over the line. So to make things official, I guess, maybe a formal request has to be done in order to escalate the process and try and get both clubs, into one room to discuss the deal and flesh out, a package that suits both parties. So I know with Newcastle, they want about £150 million, which is ludicrous in my opinion. I think, if a deal is going to be concluded, it'll be close to 120, 125 million. I think that will be the figure. Um, so yeah, for me, I've been quite firm with regards to Isak joining Liverpool. I think it will happen. It's just a matter of when rather than if. So hopefully, we'll get some sort of clarification uh, in the coming days. But the stance hasn't changed from Liverpool. He's still regarded as our number one target. So, we're hearing other players being linked, but I don't think it completely aligns with Isak, in my opinion. So, let's see. Let's hope we can get something over the line in the near future. And hopefully, we'll be able to announce Isak as a Liverpool player very, very soon. Now, another player that we've been linked with quite recently, it's Bradley Barcola. Now, the current rumor from today is that Liverpool consider Barcola as a world-class player, but no bids or talks at this stage. The focus is on Isak right now. From a PSG point of view, they want to keep Barcola and they want to offer him a new deal. Uh, the owner Al Khalifi and the sporting director Luis Campos, who signed Barcola, want to make sure he remains at the club alongside, Luis Enrique, the coach. So I gave this opinion yesterday. I think that this deal or this speculation is more of a smoke screen from a Liverpool point of view, where clearly there hasn't been any genuine discussions with Newcastle to try and get that deal over the line, or they haven't shown us encouragement that they're willing to do business. So if Liverpool are linked with a big move for another player, he might not be a direct replacement for Isak because Barcola is a winger and Isak is mainly a striker. It still shows that Liverpool have a plan B in mind where if we can't get Isak right now, no problem. We'll move on and get another player that will bolster our attack and will come back for Isak in the future because if Barcola was a striker, then maybe Newcastle will believe that they've won the war and they'll end up keeping the player. But because it's a different player of a different position, it might just make their decision a bit different, or it might twist their arm to try and talk to Liverpool now. So for me, um, I would love for it to be Bradley Barcola and Alexander Isak. It's dreamland stuff, if I'm being honest with you. I don't see it happening. I'm not saying Liverpool don't have any interest in Barcola because I was made aware of Barcola about a couple of years ago where we were linked with him when he was a Leon winger. So from those days, the name that I always kept, in my mind frame whenever I've seen Leon in action or when he's moved over to PSG, I've always tried to make sure to see how he's developed because for me, he looked like a very exciting player at Leon. And he definitely splits opinions. I've got a few friends that have told me that they don't rate him at all, and I've got other friends as well that have said, "Oh, he's a baller." So he's a player that I think because he's still quite raw, he's definitely going to split opinions. but the potential, the ability that he currently has, for me, he's at a very high level, but I feel like his ceiling is very high at the same time. So if there is a chance to sign Barcola, you just never know. Because let's be honest, on paper, we do actually need another attacker. It's Isak's just not going to be enough. Look, if you consider or if you analyze our current squad, we've just sold Nunez pretty much. Diaz is gone. You've got Harvey Elliott pretty much on the verge of leaving as well. Chiesa possibly leaving 50-50 on Chiesa right now. And of course, unfortunately, the tragic loss of Jota, it's a reduced number within our squad. So we've had to sign players. We've signed Ekatike. We've signed Florian Wirtz, but Florian Wirtz for me is predominantly a number 10, but also an option for left wing if needed. So on paper, I feel like the minimum Liverpool have to do is sign a Nunez replacement and sign a Diaz replacement. So that means two new attackers, and that's the very, very little minimum that should happen in this window. So let's see what happens. But of course, a player that we've been linked with quite recently is Rodrigo. But I've heard that Liverpool prefer Barcola instead of Rodrigo. And if Liverpool were to make a move, it would be Barcola over the Brazilian winger. So for me, it depends on what type of player you like. Me personally, and I've said it quite a few times, Barcola is the dream signing for me. He's a player that, in my eyes, is probably the most suited Luis Diaz replacement, where stylistically share very similar qualities. He's a player that's aggressive on the ball, likes to attack in behind defenses. His finishing can be improved. He's despite a great goals and assist ratio last season. He does he's not the most clinical in front of goals. So if he can refine that area of his game, which I'm so sure he can, he's only 22 years of age, so very young in the game, and I feel like he can definitely become a lethal goal scorer for any team in the future. So for me, Barcola has to be regarded as a target. I also feel like in terms of the left wing market, he's probably the best option available. Whether it happens, we'll have to wait and see. But until the window doesn't close, we can still dream because I feel like there is interest in Barcola, and I don't think it's entirely one or the other. I do feel like there is interest in Barcola. Maybe Barcola's viewed as a long-term signing in terms of maybe we want to sign him next year instead of this year. So I feel like the interest is genuine. Whether that move happens in this window, I'm not entirely sure. But I do hope Liverpool do sign Isak and another attacker. But that attacker could be a different profile that we haven't really, assessed due to not many links being circulated around social media. So we'll wait and see. But um, in terms of a preference between Barcola and Rodrigo, I've always preferred Barcola. But let me know in the chat, if you had a choice between Barcola or Rodrigo, who would you sign in this window? So let's move on and let's speak about Rodrigo. So the current rumor in regards to Rodrigo is that Liverpool have contacted Real Madrid to inquire about Rodrigo, but it's a different type of move than what we've heard in the last 2 weeks. Apparently, Liverpool are approaching Real Madrid for a loan move with an obligation to buy Rodrigo next summer in 2026. Now, is that deal a possibility, or is it a bit unrealistic to see a Real Madrid player being loaned out with an obligation to buy? You can't completely rule it out. The last time that's happened from a Liverpool point of view, we got Nuri Sahin from Real Madrid, had him on loan. Of course, it didn't work out, so he ended up, getting shipped back there and ended up signing for Dortmund in the end. So it's not something that's out of the sort of the mind frame, but you don't really get those kind of deals for such high profile players, in my opinion. But like I've just said earlier on, I would prefer us to get Barcola if he's available. And if he's not available, then maybe we can look at Rodrigo. But for me, Rodrigo is quite similar to Gakpo stylistically, where both players like ball to feet. They don't really like to attack him behind. And I feel like we've got too many similar players in the squad for us to try and add another similar player as well. So for me, Rio is a breath of fresh air right now because he's attacking uh, on the outside, but also driving with the ball in the inside, which is giving us a different dynamic. It's giving us a different option, and he's presenting a headache for the opposition. So I know it's preseason, but it's still, we're still able to see his talent amongst the first team players, and that's why so many fans have so much, hope and faith that Barcola will break into the team next season. So who knows in terms of what happens with Rio? But in regards to Rodrigo, I don't see there being any interest in signing the player. I'll be surprised if he leaves. I know he's been linked with Arsenal, which does make sense because they do need a quality left winger. But having said that, they have signed Madueke, who has played left wing in pre-season. And then flip over to the other team in North London. Rodrigo could be an option for Tottenham, where they've just sold their talisman and Heung-min Son to LAFC. So he could be a natural fit in that squad. But does the project of Tottenham appeal to the player? I don't think it would. So in my opinion, I think Rodrigo ends up staying at Madrid for another season. If somehow Barcola is available for transfer, then I can see PSG being one the front runners to sign Rodrigo as his replacement, and maybe Liverpool can get back into the mix and try and sign Barcola. But sounds a little bit, wishful thinking there. But we'll see what happens because if there's any developments regarding Barcola potentially leaving PSG, then you could see Rodrigo moving the other way. So could have a domino effect, but we'll have to wait and see if there's any truth to that rumor. Now, let's speak about Barcola and Rodrigo. If they are not genuine targets this window, I know we've had a lot of speculation around these two players. Um, I'll be quite disappointed that we haven't signed one or the other because I still believe that Liverpool need to sign another attacker on top of Isak. So basically, we need to sign a replacement for Luis Diaz. But the big question is who could fit that bill? We've been linked with a lot of right-footed left wingers. We've also been linked with Malik Fofana quite a lot in the last few weeks. I actually think Liverpool should go for a different profile. If we're going to sign another attacker, which I strongly believe we will and we should. Um, and my thinking right now is that I would like us to sign a right winger who is left footed but can also play on the left wing. So that way you have direct cover for Mohamed Salah, but that player can also play on the left wing. More importantly, if we're looking at our current squad right now, Rio and Gamora has a clear pathway to challenge or claim that left wing position in the near future. So we're not blocking his progress or his development within the first team. So with that being said, if Rio was to break into the team next season, there won't be too much pressure or focus on him because the new attacker that I've profiled will help ease that pressure on our new star boy. So open sort of question for everyone. Who would you see as a player that fits that bill? So in the Premier League, you probably got the likes of Neto or Madueke that fit that kind of profile. The player that I would like for us to go to is Magnus Aklauch. So he is a player that plays for Monaco of French nationality. Um, I've seen him a couple of times last season, but more so compilations. And I'll be honest with you, he looks like a player of real quality. He's predominantly a right winger, left-footed, but can also play on the left wing, can also play as a number 10 as well. In terms of his strengths or his style of play, he has great dribbling ability, has a decent shot on him as well, and he's a joy to watch. He plays with skill and flair, so he's the type of player that would certainly get you off your seat. So for me, he's a very exciting talent and probably the next big thing in France, in my opinion. But Liverpool have registered interest in the player. We were linked with him early in the window. Uh, I don't know how strong that interest is, but if Liverpool want to make a move for him, they'll have to be a bit quick now because Bayer Leverkusen have begun talks with the player, according to rumors. So maybe a move on the cards, you know, is happening for Aklauch to move over to Bundesliga. Who knows? Maybe he's a future target for us. Maybe next summer, where we see how he does, and maybe we'll pay over the odds to try and sign him. But if you're not familiar with the name, do keep in mind for me he's a fantastic talent and would fit that bill that I've just assessed because I feel like we haven't really got a back to back, or shall I say, a like for like cover or replacement for Salah in the team. And I feel like if we're able to sign someone like an Aklauch who fits the profile in terms of being a left forward right winger, you've automatically found a replacement or a successor for Salah in the near future. But for the time being or for the short term, he can cover left wing, right wing, and even number 10 if required. So maybe, uh, this is not the window that Liverpool are thinking about identifying Salah's successor. But I do feel like it's a position that will need to be addressed next summer, in my opinion. So let's see how it goes. But he's definitely a player that I like the look of, and definitely one player that I'll be following next season. Now, let's move over to defenders and let's move on to Mark Gay. So the current speculations that Liverpool will likely make a bid for Mark Gay at the end of August, when Crystal Palace, bring that price down. They currently value the defender at £50 million, so it's not within our range. We value him at 40 million. Um, but what we have heard is that the defender favors a move to Anfield, which is definitely an advantage for us, and it sounds positive. However, there was some news that broke a few hours ago regarding a player getting injured, and I think it could impact our deal for Gehi. Chelsea defender Levi Colwell suffered an ACL injury, and apparently he will be ruled out for majority of next season. So, we all know Gay is a former Chelsea player. He came through the ranks there. They have always, maintained interest in signing the player. So could this hamper our pursuit in signing Mark Gay, as Chelsea could come in and place a bid to replace Colwell for the short term? Or should we stay a bit more relaxed or calm because they already have a replacement in the squad, and that is Joao Hato, who they've just recently signed for 38.5 million. I think we've probably done our sort of homework or the groundwork to present the project to Mark Gahey, and I feel like Mark Gahey probably given his word or giving some sort of indication that the Liverpool project appeals to him. So I think that it should give us some sort of positive or give us a slight advantage in regards to Gay choosing Liverpool if a move can be materialized. But you can't rule out Chelsea. They have that connection with the player. Like he's come through the ranks there, so it could be an emotional or sentimental sort of decision for him to return back to his old club and maybe prove a point that he should have stayed there. He should have been sold, and he's there to show his worth to the club and the fans and the hierarchy as well. So you can't rule it out, but I would still suggest that Liverpool are front runners to sign Mark Gahey. But I do think it will be something that happens towards the latter stages of the window, which is slightly annoying. But our focus right now is trying to get Isak over the line, and then we can move on and look at other targets. We might even get another attacker, then a centre back. So I expect us to sign three more players before the end of the window. So that would be a striker, an attacker in terms of a left winger, ideally, or right winger if that's a possibility, and a centre back. So those are the three areas that I see us addressing. Well, I'm hoping more than anything else. Just got a comment here from Ozen Kabak. Said, my guy Ozzy, big up Ozen Kabak. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your comment there. On to the next player, and it's Harvey Elliott. So the current rumor is that Red Bull Leipzig are progressing well in talks to sign Harvey Elliott after finalizing Benjamin Sesko deal to Manchester United. If you haven't seen already, there are pictures circulating that Sesko is on a plane and is arrived in Manchester. So Newcastle fans might want to look elsewhere because that has happened now. So an official offer from Leipzig should be happening very, very soon. They've also on the verge of selling Xavi Simons for about £50 million to Chelsea. So they are recouping a lot of money. Um, because that was one of my concerns in regard to the Leipzig rumor that do they have the funds to sign Harvey? And it looks like they will now because we value Harvey at 40, £50 million. If we can get anything towards that range, I think that's a great bit of business. But at the same time, I have sort of voiced the concern about this move is that, does Harvey really want to go to Bundesliga or would he rather stay in the Premier League? And today we've got some sort of developments that Tottenham are apparently making significant progress in signing Harvey Elliott. The midfielder apparently is keen on a move and has held conversations with Thomas Frank, and Spurs would be willing to meet Liverpool's valuation of £40 million with a buyback option. So for me, in terms of Tottenham, if they are in serious interest of signing Javier, it's got to be 50 million. It can't be 40. We're not giving Tottenham any discount rates. We're not mates. We don't do mate rates with them. So they've burnt us in the past. That Robbie Keane deal comes to my mind, and we've had to deal with hard negotiators in Daniel Levy to ever conclude deals with them. So for me, no, they're not getting any discounts. 50 million is the asking price if they want to sign Harvey Elliott. So it's going to be interesting what happens because the Red Bull Leipzig move makes sense for Harvey Elliott in terms of from a technical standpoint. I think his skill set will suit the Bundesliga more. Whereas, him staying in the Premier League. Yes, he's from here. Of course, he's grown up through English grass root football. He's a player that's played at the Premier League, he's playing in the Championship, so he's got great experience. But I feel like because he lacks that sort of burst of speed, it might have a slight negative impact into the way his team or the team that he's embedded in will play going forward. So for me, a move to Leipzig would make more sense, but a move to Tottenham is just as appealing. They're a team that are in the Champions League. They are a very established Premier League team who will be playing under a great manager in Thomas Frank. They made some good signings, in my opinion. They've got Kudus. They've signed Tell on a permanent basis. They're on the verge. I don't know if it's official now, but they are on the verge of signing Palhinha. So they're addressing some very, interesting roles in the team. They're going to find a long-term successor for Heung-min Son, I assume as well. So, let's see. Tottenham and Leipzig are two great options for Javier to consider. So let me know in the chat or in the comments which move do you think Harvey Elliott should take? Should he move over to Red Bull Leipzig or should he remain in the Premier League and move over to North London in Tottenham Hotspurs? So yeah, let me know in the chat. Um, and the final rumor is regarding Ben Dock. Now, the latest team to show interest is Leeds United. Apparently, they are in the race to sign the Scottish winger, and Liverpool value him at 20 million. Now, is that a deal or no deal from our point of view? 20 million sounds a bit low. I'm not going to lie. I feel like we could easily get 25, 30 million just because he's a player that has shown great promise for Middlesbrough last season, but also in pre-season. He's definitely shown a great account of himself. So I thought we could at least get 25 million. Uh, from what I remember, Palace were very interested in signing him in January for 25 million. We pretty much rebuffed the offer saying, he's not available for sale right now. So I think, we can definitely get more money for the winger. And of course, he's only 18, 19 years of age, so his ceiling is quite high. So you'd expect a team to pay, a bit more of a premium for potential there. And of course, being a player from Liverpool, you accept that to one extent as well. So let's see what happens with Ben Dodd because there is a possibility that he could remain at the club and could be a backup for Salah, which I wouldn't, you know, have too much sort of grudges towards. It wouldn't be a bad option, but of course, on paper, he'll be regarded as, sixth choice in our squad. So only time will tell, but I do feel like there's a lot of interest in the player. There's a lot of sort of stock in terms of his valuation. So maybe the time is now to sell him, but I'd want more than 20 million. I'd want 25, 30 million for the Scottish winger. So let's see, what happens in regards to Ben Doak, if he has a future at the club or not. We should find out in the next couple of weeks. And that is the final rumor. I'm just going to go through some of the comments before we close the show. Um, Ozan Kawat says, I just can't believe the sheer number of players Chelsea sign every window, every season. Their club seems like an airport Aussie, constant arrival, constant departures. It's a circus. Honestly, I can't even keep up in terms of how many players they have because we heard the Cole rumors, but all I know, they might have five left-footed centre backs already in their squad. They bought Hato. I know Balashila is still there. I'm sure there's another one. I can't remember, like Disasi is an option there. I think he's still at the club. He didn't get a permanent move, I don't believe. You've got Fofana. You've got a lot of defenders that can play that role in the team. They don't have to be a left-footed centre back. They can still be a right-footed centre back that plays on the left side. So they've got a lot of numbers, and Hato is pretty much the ideal replacement for Colwell anyway. So they don't really need to sign a defender like Gay, but they might want to because in terms of the history and having an experienced player in their defense does make sense. But yeah, I don't know where they get all this money from. It's quite crazy to assess, and the same kind of vibe will go towards Manchester United. Where they're getting their money from. I know they're a club that gets a lot of revenue from branding and merchandise and advertisement, all that sort of stuff. But they've not been successful on the pitch. So yeah, a lot of fans, including Newcastle fans, are asking, where'd you get your money from? Because we can't see it right now. So yeah, crazy things happen in the Premier League where teams spend money left, right, and center, but don't know how to spend their money. And that is a prime example of Chelsea United. Buy a lot of players, but they don't really have the right profile. But having said that, the Chelsea one, I do feel like they've made some decent signs, and if they were to get one or two, experienced players in the squad, they could be challenging for top four, definitely, in my opinion. So, or maybe even have a outside chance for challenging for the title. I feel like they're that kind of team right now. They're a bit of a dark horse, if I'm honest. So yeah, let's see. Once the window concludes, I'll do a uh, season prediction show, and then yeah, I'll give you my assessments of each squad. So I'll have to spend a lot of time looking at the Chelsea squad, probably about 50 players to assess and see what shape they're going to play with. But we'll have to do it in due course. There's another show to look forward to. Ozan Kabak says, I think the Bundesliga will suit Harvey. In all honesty, it's less athletic and not as physical as the Prem, which fits Harvey's game to a T. Completely agree with Ozan Kabak. That's why I feel like it's the best move for him and his career, where he gets to play in a league that suits his skill set. Tottenham would be an interesting move as well. Um, but I don't know if he'll be able to hold his position there because they still have Madison who plays that number 10 role. He may be the Heung-min Son replacement and he, you know, solidifies that left wing role for himself. And then they sign a number 10 like a Harvey, which, it does make sense on paper, but I feel like he'll be better suited to play in the Bundesliga. Every player has their preference. Maybe a move to Germany doesn't appeal to Harvey and he'd rather stay in the Premier League, and a return to London where he's from uh, will probably tick all his boxes as well. So we'll see how this transfer speculation ends in this window. Delulu still pick up himself. He says this Isak saga is stressing me out. Not gonna lie. Uh, just let the man leave. We didn't hold Diaz or Darwin hostage before they eventually left. It's not true. And normally when you come to these sort of players and clubs where I think Isak's been told or Isak's communicated with Newcastle last year that look, I'm gonna give one more final year, and then when it comes to summer of 2025, that's the time for me to move on, as in right now. So promises being broken where Newcastle aren't living up to the bargain. And that's why he's frustrated. That's why he's you know, gone AWOL. He's gone over to his former club to train. He's come back. Now he's been told, you've been a bit of a nuisance and now you need to train on your own. It's all over the gaff, isn't it, really? So hopefully we get a conclusion because it doesn't suit Newcastle because they'll have a very annoyed player uh, within their squad. And Isak, will be frustrated. He won't really want to play um, to his capability. He won't have the attitude, or he won't have the right morale to play at the highest level. He'll just be very, very frustrated in terms of, you know, being part of a team or setup that he doesn't really care for anymore. So rather than keep someone like that on board, you might as well sell them on. Diaz, probably our closest comparison, where he wasn't happy because he wasn't getting the financial package that he wanted. He never received a new contract. And therefore, he's moved on to a different club that will meet his financial demands, but also be able to challenge for major honors and remain in Europe. So that's why he's gone over there. And we didn't really make a big fuss out of it. We spoke to the player. We kind of knew his stance, where he's not gonna sort of throw the dummy at the pram, but he's not happy and he wants to move on. So we did everything we can to finalize the deal on our terms, and that's exactly what happened with Bayern Munich. So for me, yeah, it's dragging along now. I really hope we get some sort of official news at some point this week, because it's just gone it's so far gone now, where you know no one can really turn back. We've been so revealing in terms of that's our number one target. So we can't just backtrack, after placing one bid. We're not just going to pack our bags and leave. So Liverpool are at the table, will remain there until the lights go off. And that is the end of the transfer window. That's the only time Liverpool will walk away. From Isak's point of view, he's pretty much revealed himself as well. He's shown how frustrated, how unsettled he is right now. And because of that, he is no longer part of their squad. They've got friendlies lined up this weekend. He's not being selected for that squad either. So he's not part of their plan. So what are you guys playing at? Honestly, I know they want to try and be a step ahead. Well, in their eyes, in the world, they're like 5 steps or 10 steps behind, to find a replacement before Isak is sold. But they've got zero pull right now. Honestly, they are using the same chat up lines and it's not working. So they need to go back to the drawing board, try and come up with some new tactics or new way of speaking, because it's not working. You're getting rejected left, right, and center. I saw a graphic earlier on today where it was like a rejected starting lineup, and you had the likes of Mbeumo, Ekitike, João Pedro, and like a lot of players that had rejected the Newcastle in this window alone. So it's quite embarrassing, in terms of not having the pull to sign these players. And these aren't players that are out of their bounds. They are a lot of the players, apart from Ekitike, are Premiership level players. So it should have been an easy sell. They've got Champions League football that normally gets people on board very quickly. Aston Villa were able to acquire the likes of Asensio, Rashford, because they were in the Champions League. So God knows what's going on there. We might have to give Richard Hughes for on loan or something, or let them hire him for a few days on a freelance basis to get the job done, because whoever's doing it, they're not doing a great job. I don't know if it's Eddie Howe, because I know they had a previous sporting director. I'm not sure if they end up replacing him or not. I'm not really entirely sure, but yeah, it's been a bit of a circus at Newcastle, which from afar, we'll find it amusing to an extent, but it's frustrating because we can't get the player we want from Newcastle now. So hopefully, there's some sort of development this week in terms of Newcastle finding that replacement. But if we don't hear any sort of further news about Newcastle signing new strikers, then next week we just got to place that bid and just push their hand and make sure we get the deal over the line, because I don't want this to, drag on until the end of the window. Main reason being because I don't want Isak to join the squad so late. I want him to come into our squad as soon as possible. Gain some match fitness. He's not at the level where he might not start games right now, because he's not really had a proper preseason. Remember, he's not played any matches. He's been training in Spain, and he's come back to Newcastle, but he hasn't played any level of matches right now. So he needs to regain that sharpness. And the sooner we get him on board, getting through to the AXA training center, the better, because then we can get him in a sort of a rigorous training regime and then start playing him, in a bit part way, I would say, for the next few weeks. And then once September hits, he should be a bit more accustomed to starting games. going forward. So only time will tell what happens with Isak, but I'm going to remain firm, and I believe that he will be a Liverpool player in this window. Um, Brazy says, big up yourself, Brazy. I hope you're well. Brad Pitt fan says, new subscriber, bro. Keep going. Appreciate you, Brad Pitt fan. Thank you for subscribing to the channel, and thank you for your comment as well. Bray says, no sentiment signing this window yet. I hope not. I really hope we get at least one. If I'm being greedy, I'd want two. But if we sign Mark Gay, then I'll be content with that. I think that would be the right signing and the right profile for our squad. But right now, the valuation of the player between the two clubs, we're far off. We're viewing him as a 40 million player, Palace 150 million. So my prediction is that we're going to meet in the middle ground, and I think we'll end up signing him for 45. But it will probably happen on the last week of the window, unfortunately. I think it's going to drag on a little bit. So yeah, hopefully we do. Because I think he just gives us that authority in our back line. I know we've played Endo and Groundberg, but I don't want to play too many makeshift players in our team. So I would like us to have Mark Gay available to challenge for a spot with Konate, Van Dijk, and the Endo currently would be fourth choice because Joe Gomez is not available. But when Joe Gomez is available, you've got four good defenders there, and then Endo can be fifth choice on paper. Robertson could be another alternative, and then you go to Gravenberch. For me, I don't want Gravenberch to be the first emergency centre back in the team if someone's not available. So for me, use the other players first before we get to Gravenberch, in my opinion. So hopefully we add that defender. If not, it's going to be a slight concern. I think we have the players to fill in the voids at time, but I feel like we need to have strength in depth in that department. Deleuze says, I'm a big fan of Brad Pitt as well, Big up yourself, Deleuze, Steve. I was like, come back saying, smash the likes. I appreciate that. I was like, come back. Please, if you're watching right now, please do smash the like button. It helps with the algorithm helps me, reach out to different audiences. So, Brad Pitt fan day, of course, he's a new viewer today. So hopefully we'll be able to get more viewers and more subscribers as time goes on. So yeah, appreciate everyone's support as always. Crypto, big up. So he says Isak phase has took over YouTube football. I thought there was another Star Wars spin-off hijacking the Ewoks. Yeah, he's gonna be a talking point until we get some sort of deal done now. So hopefully, there'll be more official news, more here we go straplines on YouTube. So hopefully, that'll happen sooner rather than later. Uh, Delulu Steve says, man, don't want to play for their shirt anymore. If a player did that to us, Oz, I'd drive him to the airport myself. 100%. If a player shows that kind of attitude or isn't there to fight for the cause, I don't want him at my club. Doesn't matter who it is. So, Diaz showed those kind of signs earlier on, but I always felt like, we weren't really, really, we didn't really want him to stay. We were just trying to get the best deal possible. Um, but, if he showed more attitude, then of course it would have been the same treatment for him as well. So I understand from a Newcastle fans point of view, they must be annoyed. But, if a player is showing that kind of attitude, you've just got to part ways. He's better not to be around than stay because it could be a nuisance to the squad. It could kind of ruin the team's morale as well because you know he's the main guy there. So if he's all stroppy and peed off and not in the mood, it reflects on the players as well. So they're not going to be able to get the best out of him. So the wise thing would be to sell him, get that money, and reinvest into squad, strengthen the squad, add more players to that squad, and make sure you can compete for all titles next season. Because the Newcastle have a great foundation. They just need to add a few more quality players, and they will have a squad that could definitely challenge for the top four next season. Crypto says have to take one's hat off for the recruitment and sales at LFC. Absolutely fantastic what they have done over the last decade. Appreciate your positive words there. I think this summer has been by far the best ever. And it hasn't finished yet. We're still dreaming that we might get a Barcola, Isak, and a Gay. So, let's see how it ends up. But yeah, appreciate your kind comment there. Ozzy Kabat says, Yo, Ozzy, thoughts on Scott McTominay winning the Ballon d'Or? That would be absolutely wild. Is he officially nominated? Because I saw a few of our Liverpool players being nominated, but I didn't know. Um, I didn't see the whole sort of the whole sort of selection of players that were listed. That is hilarious for him to if he's even there. I'm actually gonna have to Google this now because if he's there, wow. United fans or United as a club should be shameful. You are correct, Ozan Kabak. He has been nominated for the Ballon d'Or, but he's loved in Napoli. And that's the thing with certain clubs, if you really play for that badge, they will treat you with high regards. And that is the key there. So look, fair play to him. And look, it's a big move for him to, go over to Italy. It's unfamiliar territory. They couldn't speak the language, the culture, the lifestyle's different. But fair play to him. He's gone over there. He's had a huge impact in their season. They're current Italian champions. So yeah, no, it deserves that nomination for sure. But it also shows you that United is, a cemetery where it's a death to a lot of players. They love to kill careers. And thankfully for Tomine, he's able to resurrect his career and do good things elsewhere. But yeah, it shows you that's not the place to go. But Sesko, do your thing. He's probably arrived now. I saw the pictures earlier on of him on a private jet. So yeah, hope he's excited about that move because I don't think it's the best move for him. But hey, each to their own. Crypto says, good energy, Ozzy. Good luck with the channel. Appreciate your comment. Appreciate your comments. Thank you for your support there. And Delulu Steve says, give up on Barcola. Us that ain't happening, bro. I know. I got a dream. I do feel like it's more of a smokescreen to push Newcastle. Like, look, you guys are just playing around. Isak doesn't want to stay here. He doesn't want to play for you guys. You don't even want him to play for you guys. So what are you doing? Like, why are you just being long about things? So let's talk. Let's get the deal done. Otherwise, Barcola's available. So I think that's the mind games. They were like, look, if you're not going to talk business, we're going to go for another target that isn't an Isak replacement. It's just an alternative. But we'll come back for Isak, whether it's in January or next summer, because he's still the striker that we want. Because Barcola and Isak can play in the same team. Barcola is a left winger and Isak is a striker. So I think that's where the mind games have come into it. Uh, and it's one of those things where even if Barcola suddenly became available, we would be interested in signing because he's a player that the club have watched for a number of years. And I feel like he would fit our team to the T. So I'm not having high hopes. I'm more dreaming about that one, but the Isak one, I'm very, very adamant and I'm confident that we will get him over the line. It's just a matter of time, honestly. I'll be very surprised if we don't get Isak in this window. Honestly, I don't think I don't think that's the move that can't be made. It has to be done now. It's so many bridges have been burnt now. There's no going back. Just let him, come over to Liverpool and let us just, start our season with Isak in our team. So we'll see how that deal ends up finalizing. Stuart, speak of yourself. He says we need a winger after Isak. I want Isak and Rodrigo together this summer. We do need a winger. I do agree. I think another winger would make perfect sense. I pretty much mentioned earlier on in the show that the perfect attacker for me would be, in terms of the profile, a left-footed right winger that plays left wing. That way you have cover for Salah, but also you have a player that can play and cover for left wing as well. And also not block the pathway for Rio, because Rio can definitely challenge for that left wing role. So in an ideal world, that would be the right profile. But in terms of Rodrigo, I have a feeling he'll stay at Madrid. I don't think he'll make the move in the end. Barcola would be my dream signing as sort of the left winger, but of course Barcola can play on the right as well. So I want it to be that kind of caliber of a attacker if we do sign someone. Otherwise, it might be worth us waiting for a Barcola to be available next summer, if that makes sense. Um, but we'll see. Uh, Malek Fofana is another player that's been linked, but I do like him. I think he's very talented, but because he predominantly plays on the left side, I don't know if we'll have an instant impact. I want that player who replaces Diaz to have an instant impact. Like Rio hasn't been earmarked as anyone's replacement, but I know if we bring him into the team, he'll have an impact because he's grown up here. He's played English football his life, so he's accustomed to the dynamics of English football. Whereas for Fana, it might take him time to get used to that. So maybe it's worth us getting someone else that's a bit more established at their current level. So like Barcola and Rodrigo, especially Rodrigo. Rodrigo's been winning titles left, right, and center for years now. Barcola had one of his best seasons last year, and I feel like with Barcola, he's just on that verge of hitting that next world class level. In my opinion, I think he's that close. Um, just needs to play for a team that gives him the platform to play week in, week out. And I think he can really become a superstar in years to come. That's how much I rate Barcola. So let's see what happens. But I think you're right. I would like it to be an Isak and a winger. Um, I don't know if that's going to happen. Isak has to happen. A winger could be a bonus, in my opinion. That's not what I want, but I just have that feeling that, if we don't find the right target, we might just wait until the next window or next summer to address that position. Ozan Kamer says, after Verts, I don't give up on any transfer. Facts. That's why I've got new energy as well. That's why I'm still playing with the idea that we could get Barcola and Isak, even though, I'm trying to give you both perspectives where I'm giving you the excited fantasy fan there, but also, the realist as well, where I feel like it makes perfect sense for us to get both players. I don't know if PSG would want to sell Barcola because he's still very highly regarded. And I think this could be two elements where Liverpool are using Barcola's name as a smokescreen to rush or force the hand of Newcastle to do a deal with us for Isak, or the agent is Barcola's agents trying to play a game where he gets a better deal for his client because there have been negotiations for an extension, but they haven't come to any sort of closing grounds. So could be, 4D chess both ways. But I do feel like with the vert still, anything's possible. We've got that attitude right now, We're in Anfield right now. Anything is possible. So that's the mentality we have with transfers. So let's see, who comes through the door in the end. Stuart says for is not better than Rio and Ben Doak. Potentially, possibly. I think Fofana does have a lot of potential, but he didn't hit a lot of the heights. He was signed about a year or two ago from Belgium. I think it was Genk was a club that he joined. I might be wrong. He was signed as a potential player, but he's still labeled as potential. He hasn't elevated his game any further, so he's shown good traits that he's a very good sort of winger. And he was actually brought in to replace Barcola, ironically. That was a player that they signed as his replacement. So he hasn't really, hit the heights as some would have expected. So I think it might be where he's not quite ready for that Premier League move. But who knows? I would have thought Leon would have, made him available at more of a cut price. But with Everton looming around, I think the fee was around 45 million. For me, 45. It's way too much, honestly. So I probably agree with you to an extent that I would rather push Rio uh, earlier than planned into the first team or just utilize the squad a bit more, because you've got the likes of Verts, Sobozlai, Gakpo, and even Ekitike that can play on the left hand side. So for the time being, we have options there. And I feel like, we don't need to sign too many players just for the sake of it, but they have to be the right level and the right quality, in my opinion. Just got a comment here from Lominos. My brother, how are you? I'm good, thank you, bro. Hope you're doing well. He says, as a Newcastle fan, we are having a mare, mate. Please come bid 145 million. Let's get this deal done. He has to go so we can move on, mate. Isak will thrive with you guys. Yeah, so it's quite refreshing when I hear a fan from a different team, speaking the truth or speaking, with facts there because you must be so annoyed with the Isak situation right now. We're getting a tad bit frustrated because, we feel like, we can get a deal done, but Newcastle aren't, negotiating, whereas you've got a player that's, you know, let's be honest, has been a disruptive to your preparations. He's refused to go to Singapore for your preseason fixtures. He's returned to Newcastle, being away in Spain where he shouldn't have been there in the first place. And the club have shown their cards now where they're like, look, you're not part of the squad, so you got to train on your own now. So the solution is to finalize that deal. 135, it might be that range. I think it'll be a bit less. I think it'll be between 120 to 130, including add-ons. But look, that money, I'm sure will help you guys a lot to finalize other deals. Let me know what you think about the Cisco deal because that was the main target that you guys have. Of course, it looks like he's over to Manchester United. So let me know in terms of the links of Nicholas Jackson, Watkins, Wissa. Which one are you know excited or are you content with joining Newcastle because uh the attacking positions need to be addressed. I even saw Antonio being linked today as well on a free transfer. So yeah, I think Newcastle are in desperate need of addressing attackers um, in their squad. So hopefully, you'll get the money and we'll get Isak in the end. So we'll both be happy at the end of the window. Delulu Steve says, but Fofana has more raw pace than Doak and Rio. He does, but my concern with Fofana in comparison to Rio, I feel like Fofana's a bit more lightweight. I think Rio, despite being 16, he's deceptively very strong, from the challenges that I've seen, in preseason. So I feel like he's got a little bit more about him. But I think he's got a better IQ. He's very skillful, but he knows when to be the fullback. The only thing that Rio needs to work on is once he's been at fullback, which pass is the right pass to execute that end product. In terms of shooting, I feel like he's at an advanced level. He's very precise, very clinical with his finishing. He's not smashing it. He's not lacing those shots. He's doing it with precision and accuracy. So for me, he's a special talent. He really is. But in terms of Doak and Rio, Fafana might have more raw pace, but I don't feel like he's got the same IQ in comparison to Rio. Ben Doak, arguable to say, but because I've seen Ben Doak play predominantly on the right hand side, slightly different dynamics for me. I think Doak is an old school winger where proper down that byline on that right hand side, which we don't really play in that way, but obviously helps stretch the opponent's defense and creates pockets of space in between our attackers as well. So who knows? But I'd probably say I don't know. I feel like Rio's quicker. Maybe because I've seen Rio a bit more in recent weeks. I feel like Rio's quicker, but I feel like he's got a better IQ than Fofana. So I'd rather just promote Rio and make him sixth choice attacker in our squad or seventh choice if we were able to sign a Barcola or a Rodrigo in the end. Um, Stuart says, please talk about Baliba. I heard we are rumored to stop him from going to Manchester United. I have not seen that rumor. Um, I'm going to do a quick search on Google because if that is the case, then very interesting. But I've not heard that rumor. I don't think he's a target for us. Um, and Brian are going to ask for a dumb amount of money. From what I've heard, they've been wanting to have around 110 million or 100, like 100 million minimum is what they want for Belieber. And look, very talented player. Don't get me wrong. He's not worth 100 million. Honestly, he really isn't. Like he's very talented, but I would rather us get Isak than get Belieber for 100 million. Let me know in the chat. Would you rather spend 100 million on Isak or Belieber? Because that is the kind of comparison in terms of money being involved. For me, Isak all day long. I don't even think that's even a consideration. But I don't think we're in for Belieber. Not I've not read anything. So if you have a link, feel free to copy and paste the tweet or the source, and I'll have a look into it. But I don't think that's a genuine rumor there for Liverpool trying to sign Belieber. Delusive said, "Can Belieber play centre back?" From what I know, I don't think I've ever seen him play centre back. He was at Lille before he joined Brighton, so he was more of a number eight, where they played in a 4-3-3 formation. He was normally the left side number eight, but once he's come over to Brighton, he's played in a double pivot, so more as a number six now. So a six and an eight. I think if he could be a makeshift centre back if required, kind of like Gravenberch, but I wouldn't say that's his primary position. I don't think that's his role. So no, makeshift maybe, but not as a predominant centre back. I don't think that's an option. Stuart says Rio's growth shouldn't stop us from getting elite players because he's still a kid. However, what is the sense in signing another project like for Fana? I would accept Barcola or Rodrigo and not for Fana. I kind of agree with you on that one because I've been quite strong in my stance in terms of look, I respect, what Rio's doing. He's really lit up our preseason with his performances. But he's 16 years of age. He'll be 17 end of the month, but he's still very, very young. So I feel like it's very important for Liverpool to try and have the strongest squad available and then take it from there. I don't want it to be where, we've got 4 or 5 attackers and then he's one of, the outside options ends up being sixth choice and then we pick up an injury where so let's paint this scenario right now. With our current squad, if Gakpo's injured, who's the first left winger that goes onto that side? It's Rio. You could probably put Szoboszlai there if you wanted to, or Ekatike or Curtis Jones, like makeshift player, or Verts even, on the left hand side, which would probably make the most sense. But in this scenario, we don't have a direct replacement for Gakpo in that left wing position. Before it was Diaz, but Diaz is no longer at the club. So that's a concern where you don't want to put too much pressure on the kid. I think if that was a real life situation, the names that I mentioned, they'll end up playing on the left hand side. But he gives us a different option in comparison to the other names. He's dynamic, he attacks from behind, and he can definitely be a nuisance on that left wing. But I feel like we should definitely have signed the player as a direct replacement for Diaz, and then Rio should be regarded as a bonus addition to our squad, not as one of the main names or main squad players, in my opinion. That can occur next summer onwards, in my opinion, where this season, he plays for the under 23s, learns his trade, you know, gets valuable game time playing at that level, and then in the second half of the season, get him involved in the cup games. Uh, when Salah's at AFCON, he'll be the extra attacker that we need. So that's the kind of motion we should be doing for, or the pathway that we should present for Rio. Uh, it shouldn't be really put too much pressure on the kid, in my opinion. But look, he's an exciting talent, and I get it. The fans are getting excited, they're getting a bit giddy about it, and I get it. Uh, I've just probably been a bit more of an experienced Liverpool fan to know that you got to be patient with these young players and not put too much pressure on them because they can unfold. They can you know get affected by the pressure or by the limelight, and it can impact their careers going forward. So I don't want that to be the case for Rio. I feel like Rio has amazing talent and could be a special player for us going forward. So let's see what happens, but. I agree with your stance. I feel like we should try and address the squad and assign a established attacker very, very soon. Jay Kismet says, peace, bro. You never walk alone. Big up yourself, JK. I hope you're doing well. Um, Laminas says, I want Samuel Aguilar from Porto, but we will see who Eddie wants. Likely will be Premier League player. I don't mind losing at all on Sesko or Ekitike, weirdly. I rate Samuel Aguilar and João Pedro. I was sad losing on him. Yeah, Pedro looks like a talent, I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, that is definitely a huge blow for Newcastle. Sam Aguero is an interesting one. He was very close to joining Chelsea last summer. So, he's very big in physique, very strong in terms of aerial presence, but he can definitely score some goals. So yeah, that's an interesting profile as well. But I think Newcastle will definitely need at least 2 strikers, due to Callum Wilson also being released um, from his contract there. Deleuze seems to if not Isak, the next signing should be a bloody centre back. I hope we get an Isak deal. For me, that's even something I don't even think about, to be honest with you. If we don't get Isak, I'll be very, very annoyed about that. But in terms of the order, I'd say it's got to be Isak, centre back, and then the winger, in my opinion. I don't think the winger is the priority. Um, I would like Isak to be done ASAP, and then the centre back. Hopefully, it could be Mark Gay, and then we sign another winger. But I've voiced it previously. I want 2 centre backs. If we were to get Gay and Leone, for example, that would fit the bill perfectly. But I think we'll sign one now and then sign one for next summer. JK says striker, winger, DM, and two centre backs, and away we go. Yeah, that would be the perfect window that you can imagine. That everything is covered for years and years. But I think will be a striker, a winger, and I think we'll get one centre back. That DM and that second centre back will happen next summer. And I think we've got players identified for those profiles. I don't think it will happen all at once. It'll be too much for us to do. So I think we'll sign three out of the five that you mentioned there. Uh, and Lomino says, I wish Isak said he wanted to leave end of last year because the project we presented to our target strikers was as backup to rest Isak. When needed, we might have gotten some if we said you would be the number nine. Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Um, and that's probably why a lot of the strikers were not completely on board because they were informed that they would have the chance to maybe play alongside Isak at times, but Isak's the main man, so you might have to fight for your position. Um, if Isak confirmed by the end of last season that he was leaving, then maybe that would help your recruitment process, or it would have helped your pitch to sign that striker. But at the same time, I think you still would have had issues with Isak making that announcement last season because the price of all of those targets that you're going to try and go for would have skyrocketed. It would have been inflated prices because they know you've got money in the bank. You've got 120, 130 million from the Isak deal. So people are going to try and rip you off left, right, and center. So I just feel like, with Newcastle, they haven't done their homework to sign, either his replacement or at least two strikers. And whatever pitch they're going with is not working. So they've got to try and switch up, try and add some strikers to the squad. Even if it's not, the prime targets or whatnot, you have to add some bodies into that squad now. So, whether it's Antonio who's on a free, or whether it's an Ollie Watkins or a Wissa, it has to be done very, very soon. So time is running out, and I feel like the season's literally starting next week. And if it's starting next week and no development from a Liverpool point of view, I'm not expecting to see Isak playing for Newcastle anytime soon. He'll be put in the code until someone signs him this window. I feel like the bridge has been burnt so badly that there's no coming back, honestly. So just put everyone out of their misery. Just give us Isak, and then yeah, you'll have the funds to sign whichever attacker or players you want in your squad. And yeah, everyone should be happy by the end of the window. So let's see, what happens in the end. And that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for everyone with your comments. Appreciate your engagement. Made the show very, very good as always, guys. So appreciate the likes of Oz and Kabak. Big up yourself. Shout out to Deluded Steve. Shout out to Brazy. Shout out to Brad Pitt fan. Appreciate you subscribing as well. Shout out to Crypto. Shout out to Stewart's. Shout out to Laminos. And shout out to JK as well. Appreciate your involvement as always, guys. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. In terms of upcoming show, I will be doing another show tomorrow. Most likely be transfer related. We'll have these similar discussions and we'll see, what rumors are circulating the airwaves. Hopefully, we'll get some sort of developments in regards to Isak or Gay, that's the kind of news that I'm waiting for, and I'm refreshing my Twitter feed on a hourly basis. So hopefully we'll get some sort of breaking news or some sort of development, and then yeah, we can speak about our upcoming game. I guess because it's not a competitive game, I might not do a match review, but we can still have a chat amongst ourselves in terms of what the potential lineup could be, and then yeah, we can take it from there. So we'll definitely do a show tomorrow, and then also we'll do a watch along for that game for the community show, which is of course Crystal Palace versus Liverpool. So watch along this Sunday. The match is around 4 o'clock, so we'll be live just before 4 p.m. So yeah, make sure to join in and yeah, be part of the show with your comments in the live chat. Just got a couple of comments from JK saying peace, bro. You never walk alone. Big up yourself, JK, and still saying good night. Big up, guys. So as always, guys, take care, stay safe, and I hope to speak with you all very, very soon. Goodbye.